What is up, guys? My name's Jason Dragonetti. I'm here with the all-new 2026 Yamaha Yz450f. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about just some things that I've noticed. I've put just about 10 hours on it already. Been about a week. Just trying to go through things, test it out, see what this new gen, because it's completely different than the 25 and before. So with some frame updates, some valving in the shocks and the forks, different linkage, different motor, different header. There's just quite a bit new on this bike, and I want to go over it from a standpoint of a regular consumer, of someone who's not really racing this but wants to ride a 450. So some things that I did very good from previous gen to now. And then I also want to go over from a racer standpoint. Can you race this thing stock at a pro national or even at a higher end race like a Loretta Lynn, national or a regional? So let's go. Let's dive right into some of the stuff that they changed. Let's start off with saying this bike is night and day different from your 25s, 24s, 23, like this newer gen bike. Starting off with the frame. Some advantages is your area one in the corner. So if you have 1, 2, 3, your area one, that first part of that corner, because of these frame changes, it gave you way more front end feel. That portion of that corner is planted. It just feels like it sits right in there. You don't have to second guess yourself about a rut or anything like that. You can dive it in and it'll just plant and hold. Another thing with that front end feel, what I feel like lacked on the previous gens was if you're coming around a hole shot, or say for your out west guys, you're riding like Glen Helen, or you're riding something a little bit harder packed, or even your East Coast guys, you're riding a clay track, you're having to skate around some of this stuff, or coming out of like a flat corner when the rut ends. This does very, very well. Way more than what the 25s and before did. It just has that gripping feeling. It doesn't seem like it wants to push nearly as bad. I really didn't have any complaints with that. I thought that was where it really excelled. It just feels more connected, to put it in simple terms. The old gens, even though they were very, very good, you would get a little bit of a skatey feeling in the front end, where some people I know, they were having trouble being able to throw it in. But this fixed that 100%. Where I feel like this is almost a disadvantage, however, though, I know you're probably thinking, Jason, you just said it was a huge advantage. It is. But I've been riding a sand track, I rode a clay track, and where I feel like with the stock clamps and the stock forks, it almost made the bike want to dive too much sometimes coming into corners. So what we did was we slid the forks up flush in the stock triple clamps. We messed with the compression and rebound just a little bit, and it did get a little better. However, with that, it never felt like the old gen in that diving sensation when you get into something deep sand, or like you're having to cut down a little hard. It just felt like it was a little too much. So what we did to fix that, I went with the Luxon 23 offset triple clamps, and then ran my forks flush. Just gave the bike a little bit longer of a feel, so when we're going down, because of that more front end stability, or that front end feeling, the bike would get head shake a little bit. So with this, it was definitely way better. Throughout the next week or so, we are going to try different offsets. We're going to try a 24, and then we have some races on the way too, that we're gonna try out as well. However, though, 23 offset triple clamps, flush forks seem to make a world of a difference on this bike from stock. The stock suspension, let's get into a little bit, way different from previous years. I rode a 25 and a 26 back to back. The 26 was definitely stiffer. Brand new shock for this year. You have the quick adjust with your hands. You don't need a flat head. You don't need to destroy anything else. Super easy. This shock, however, is valved pretty stiff for your everyday consumer. Me being 180 pounds, riding pro nationals, this was a little stiff in some areas, and then the forks were just a little bit soft in my opinion. So right out the gate, the bike did feel just a hair unbalanced for me, but after a little bit of fine tuning, breaking it in, setting some sag, it did get a little bit better. So if you're just an everyday kind of consumer, somebody that's just like, hey, I want to buy a 450, I'm not really looking to race, I just want to ride, the suspension, depending on your weight, might be just a hair stiff. If you're about my weight, 180, or heavier, it might be pretty good. So just some things to look. If you do get a 26, look into getting some Luxon 23 offset clamps. They're a little bit softer, and it gives you just a little bit longer of a feel of the motorcycle. Now, let's talk about the next thing, the hydraulic clutch here. Your hydraulic clutch, so on the 23 to 25 models, this could actually get as an option, like you can just bolt this thing straight on. 26, it comes standard. I was told that the old generation, so the 23 to 25, when you would bolt this on, it didn't have as much of a on-off feeling as this 26. You were able to slip it just a little bit, and it gave you a little bit more of that almost cable feel, about as close as you can get to having a cable. I'm a big cable fan. I love the cable. I've always loved the cable. This hydro clutch is very on-off feeling. What I mean by that is when you're coming out of a corner, you can't really slip it. It's either engaged or it's not. So I found myself just feathering the bike a little bit more just because of that awkward like on-off feeling, but it's just something you have to get used to. It didn't really take that long for me, but yeah, definitely something different to get used to. But honestly, where I felt like the hydro clutch was better than that cable is on the starts. So when you're on the start and you're feeling that bike and you're trying to slip that clutch just a little bit, when that gate drops and you let that clutch out, it almost feels like there's a little bit of a slippage. With this, it's just the second it's out past the point, it's gone. The bike's taken off. I did get to race it this weekend, and it was phenomenal on the start. So I definitely think there's an advantage and a disadvantage to having your hydro. But right now, as much of a cable guy, as much as I love the cable, this thing's kind of growing on me just a little bit. Now, we do have some different things here. Back here on the bike, I do have a 52 tooth sprocket. Stock is 51. The reason I went up in a tooth, so I went to a 52, the bike just seemed, from stock, it just seemed a little slow. Like it needed that little bit more pickup. And you're probably looking at me and be like, dude, Yamaha's bark. All right, why do you feel like it's so slow? That has a lot to do with the new header and the exhaust that they had. When I got on this bike, to be 100% transparent, I do not get paid by Yamaha. I love their products, but this bike from a consumer standpoint is way slower than the 25. And in that aspect of it's smoother. When you roll on the throttle, it's very, very linear from quarter all the way up to wide open. It doesn't give you that illusion like the previous years did, when you would crack the throttle and the bike would just be like, whoa, and like rip you off the handlebars. This is way smoother. So if you're just an everyday guy that just loves to rip around a 450, just go to a track, have some fun, and you don't feel like getting yourself ripped off the handlebars, this new gen is for you. This 26 will be phenomenal. You'll love this. Very, very easy to ride. Very, very smooth. There's a lot of confidence in the throttle. You don't have to feel it getting away from you. It's easy to roll through corners. However, where I feel like it lacked is it felt very, very choked off. They changed the header and the silencer just for sound check. To me, it was way too choked off. You could rev the bike. It had a very short power window. No matter how wide open you would go, it shift through the gears. The bottom end stock for someone that races was just a little too mellow for me. When I would try to roll on the gas, coming through the corner, it just felt dead. And that initial one. So the way I was describing it to my motor guys, say you have your power from 1 to 10, right? The previous gen would make power at say 3 and carry all the way till even past 10. You'd have so much over rev, right? This bike from stock felt like you had power from like 3 to 8. It signed off a little bit at the top and was pretty mellow at the bottom. Now, like I said, if you're just an everyday dude, you're not going to really feel those differences, and this bike's going to be smooth. It's going to feel almost like a 350 in a sense, just a little bit faster. Very, very easy to ride. So if that's what you're looking for, if you thought the 25s or 24s were just way too powerful, you're going to love this bike. This bike's going to be great for you. From someone that's racing, especially if you're kind of on a budget, this might be a little bit slow. So I've raced a 23 basically stock at a pro national before, and I felt like I could be competitive kind of with a pipe and some fuel and some mapping. But on this one, if you were to race this one stock, you would get walked. It is what it is. It felt too choked off. But let's talk about how we can fix that, because no one wants to do that. No one wants to get just blown by like they're sitting still. So here are some things that I changed that could help that feeling of, I want that more exciting power. I want to be able to just rip out of a corner and not have that feeling of, oh, am I in the wrong gear or whatnot. So let's get into that. First thing you want to do, go to a 52 tooth sprocket on the rear. Your 51 doesn't pull as hard coming out of the corners, and I felt like with a 52, I could really pull out the corner just a little bit more. I could ride third a little bit longer, and it feels like it picks up a little bit. Where I found the biggest differences, okay, take that stock silencer off and put an FMF on it if you can. So from 18 to 26, your pipe will fit, your FMF pipe will fit. I took my 23 pipe and put it on here, and when I tell you it is a night and day difference, it is completely different bike with just that slip-on on. If you want that exciting power and you want, like, hey, when I grab that throttle, I want that power to come on and be there and give me that over rev, that FMF is going to do that. It completely woke the bike up. It didn't feel as choked off anymore. I felt like I can actually ride and be competitive and race on it. If you're just looking for a stock, just mellow kind of 450 and you want to get around, something that's maybe a little bit quicker than a Cowie, but still has that kind of smoothness, this 26 is your bike. If you want something a little bit more powerful, but you still like the Yamaha feel, get this 26, put a 52 on the rear, and put an FMF slip-on it. Night and day. You will be blown away with how good this bike is. So some things that we're going to do a little bit in the future, we're going to do some different airbox mods. We're going to try out putting a previous gen, like a 25 airbox on, because the airboxes are different. So trying to get some more airflow into it, because it still does feel a little bit starved for air. But that could also be because of the header and the airbox. So once we do that, we can come back and do some more testing. But just off the rip, that's what I felt like this bike needed power-wise. It just needed a slip-on and a little bit different gearing. Now I love this bike. When I first got it, I was struggling with it a little bit coming off a previous gen bike. It felt slow. It just didn't feel like it pulled out of the corners like I wanted to. So yeah, that was the main difference. Now let's talk about triple clamps. Why do I have Luxons on here? You're probably wondering, dude, these aren't the stock forks. So the front end feel of this bike, like I was saying previously, there's a lot. That diving sensation that it would get coming into some of the corners, we wanted to fix that. The 23 offset Luxon triple clamps, the Luxons are a little bit softer, and it just brought that front end out just a little bit more, where I feel like that straight line stability was a little bit better, and then it wouldn't dive as much in the corners. Other than that, honestly, just sprung the forks for me, because the stock forks, just for the speed that I was going and the tracks I was riding, were just a little too soft. The shock, I actually do have the stock shock on there. It's actually pretty good. It's sprung or valved a little stiffer than what the old generations were, but overall, after some little tweaks here and there with compression and rebound, being 180 pounds, I think I'm like 16 out on compression, but it is getting better. Each time I rode it, we would change it just a little bit, a couple clicks here and there. And honestly, the more I did that, the more the chassis kind of settled out, the bike handled, and that new frame really came into play. So overall, very, very good. Now let's talk about this new seat for 2026. I've had some complaints with the old stock seat being like super round, super hard, and sliding. You would slide quite a bit. This one is a little bit better. This new seat cover that they put on there definitely does help a little bit with grip. For those of you that usually just take this off anyway and put a seat cover on it, it's no big deal. For your average dude that maybe doesn't have the money to do that, or just wants to ride and doesn't feel like changing it, this stock seat is way better than the previous years, in my opinion. You definitely have a little bit more grip. It keeps you from sliding back a little bit. Now, the seat is pretty narrow still. It's your typical Yamaha, really rolled seat. Doesn't feel like a couch like a Kawasaki does. It's just, yeah, it's just a little different. It is a little hard, but I feel like it's maybe a little softer than, say, a 25's seat. But I do like on these Yamahas how you can just slide all the way up a little bit more. That thin feeling makes the bike feel narrow, but really, really planted. Like, you can get up on that bike and you don't have to worry about feeling super fat behind you or anything like that. This new seat is quite a bit better stock than the previous gens, in my opinion. Now let's talk about, we have some different plastics on this thing. I know on the older generations, this would come out all the time. I don't know why. On my bike, I ended up just putting a regular 8mm in there. And this year, you could just leave that in there and then take off the 2 8mm and it pops right off. And this little thing just stays there. To me, it's way easier to do. It makes it easy just to get in there, take out or plug in your Wi-Fi box and anything else that you need. It's easier to clean. You're not having to worry about this bolt coming out. Onto the foot pegs. The foot pegs, so this mount on the frame is different this year. The older generations, especially like the 23s, would go a little bit more slanted here. So you would catch your foot on it and it feels like it would slide if you had your feet far enough in. This is definitely way better. I don't really feel this as much. I did have a buddy ride it where he feels like he's coming off a Cowie, where he feels like it's a little bit more present, like he can feel it a little bit more. Someone that's coming off a Yamaha, to me, I feel like it's a little better. I can get my foot in there a little bit more, and it just feels more planted with the bike. I don't feel like I'm slipping as much. Other thing I want to say that they changed was this rear fender going by your exhaust makes it way easier this year on the 26 to get your hand in there and yank this thing up on a stand. When the pipe's hot, obviously you don't want to grab it, burn your hand. So I found myself like picking it up either by the rear fender or trying to squeeze my fingers in between the exhaust and this plastic here, and end up just torching your finger. This year there's a different gap in here, and it makes it so much easier to pick this bike up and put it on the stand. That was just a little small difference, not a big make or break deal. It's just a convenience thing. It's just way easier. Final thoughts on this bike. After racing a 23 for so long, and then riding a 24, and then a 25, and then riding the 25 back to back with this 26, if I had to choose, this 26 is the way to go from the 25, with a few exceptions. If you're looking to just putt around and you want maybe a little bit more power stock and you don't have the budget to do, simple mods, buy a 25. Your 25 is going to be the way to go with that if you want a little bit more exciting power. Like I said, if you're maybe an older vet guy, someone who's not as experienced, or if you just don't feel like getting ripped off the handlebars every time you ride a bike, you want something smooth, a little bit more mellow, but handles phenomenal, the 26 is the bike to get. The power delivery of it's way smoother than the 25. It feels almost like a Cowie as far as the power delivery, just in a different spot. If you do have a little bit of a budget, throw an FMF on there and it'll wake that bike up if you're looking for that power. And that's basically all you have to do to get just a little bit more power out of this thing and relieve it of that choked off feeling. Other than that, this bike is phenomenal. If you have a little bit more of a budget, you want to throw some offset clamps on there, make it out a little bit longer, you will get improved straight line stability. However, the bike stock in its stock platform, stock triple clamp, suspension, exhaust, everything, this bike is a little bit better than that 25. Now, you are going to have to pay, unless you can find a dealership that you're super cool with, you're going to have to pay tariff pricings. They are on these new bikes. Unfortunately, if they weren't, this bike would be sold in a heartbeat. That little bit of a price difference, I've seen people have them, for 13 out the door. Is it worth the extra $3-4 grand? in my opinion, with the FMF and triple clamps, yes, all day long. This bike is way better. If you don't have that money, get the 25, put a set of clamps on if you can, and it'll feel similar. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, stock, because I'm going to do a little bit stock and then do it with just these upgrades. Stock, handling wise, front end feel, I'd say I'd give this thing 8.5, 9 out of 10. Power wise, in the beginning, if you're just a vet, like I said, or a just regular consumer, you're not racing this bike a ton, you just want to ride it on there, power delivery smoother than the previous generations. From that aspect, I give it about an 8. If you're someone that's racing that needs that exciting power or needs that more of a grunt off the bottom, I give it about a 6. With the FMF now, if you throw that FMF and you wake that bike up a little bit, and you throw an airbox on it, and you do simple things like that, it goes right back up to a 9 at being stock. It's phenomenal. Let's talk about some other things. Gearing, a 51 tooth stock feels a little bit sluggish, but it pulls differently. It makes the power in a different area. With a 52, much better. Simple things. A sprocket, would change a world of a difference. So in conclusion, the hydro clutch is very good. Just takes some getting used to. It is a little bit of an on and off feeling. The new frame is definitely better than the 25s. It does give you more front end feel. It gives you that more in area 1, like I was saying, in that corner, and on flat corners, much better than the previous generations. The overall package of this bike, stock, for your everyday rider, not someone who's racing like crazy, just a guy that's like, hey, I want a 450, I want to be able to just rip out with my buddies, or maybe I want to throw some laps down, but something that doesn't rip me off the handlebars, this 26 is the bike for you. You need to get one. It's way better in that aspect. If you're looking for somebody to race, or a bike to race, a little bit can go a long way on this bike. Get that pipe, get the sprocket, maybe throw some clamps on it, and this bike is going to be your dream bike. So overall, from the 25 to the 26, I know this 26 had a ton of hype around it. It lives up to it. It's pretty dang good, especially if you throw these little things on it. It's going to be just that much better. So like I said, smooth power from stock. If you're a vet guy or someone that's just your regular everyday racer or rider, stock, this bike will be everything that you've ever dreamed of. If you're a little bit more serious guy, you're chasing Lorettas, you're doing outdoors, you're doing things like that, which 99% of the guys that are doing outdoors have at least a little bit of a budget that they can throw some little things on like this and it'll help them. But if not, if you're a brokey like me and you're just trying to do it with a little bit of money here and there, these simple things, it'll probably cost you $1,000, maybe a little bit more without the clamps. I'd say maybe $2,000 max with a full pipe, sprocket, and clamps, and this bike is going to be one of the best bikes you've ever owned. And that's a wrap on the all-new 2026 Yamaha Yz450f. If you guys like what you heard today, give me a follow, subscribe, and let me know what you guys want to see next, or if you guys have any other questions with this bike. We're going to be testing it quite a bit over the next couple weeks, just trying to get this bike dialed in for the upcoming racing season, just trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, and on a budget too. We don't have some of these other crazy funded projects. This is all out of my own pocket, things that I feel worked and what didn't on the old ones, and just going to test it. If it fits, we're throwing it on and we're going to try it. So yeah, we'll keep you guys updated as we improve this bike and figure out things that work and don't work. We'll let you guys know.